Violence is totally unnecessary in many, many cases. I'm representing Archie Elliott III. I've been at this for 27 years, and my son has been deceased longer than he lived. He lived to be only 24, and how many of you have heard of the name Archie Elliott III? Even though it happened 27 years ago. I'll briefly tell you the story. He had worked on a construction job that day in Virginia, had driven home, had stopped to get some beer, or whatever the white collar or blue collar people do, and he was about 3 minutes away from home when this young white officer, about my son's age, stopped him because the car was weaving. That was the only offense that my son had against him on that day. And he complied with the officer. He was intoxicated. And he was wearing only shorts, no shirt, and tennis shoes. Tall, 6'1", weighing 165 pounds. He was searched before they placed him in that cruiser. No contraband was found. Nothing was found on him. They handcuffed him and subsequently put him in the front seat of District Heights, Maryland police cruiser. And one of the two officers, Wayne Chaney, was a black young officer who was backup. And Wayne Chaney also had a ride-along with him. And while they stood talking near the cruiser, they alleged that my son pointed a handgun at them. Keep in mind, his hands are still cuffed behind his back. He's intoxicated. He's sitting in a cruiser that had dark tinted windows. And I can't for the life of me figure out what they could see in that cruiser. You don't see that on police cars normally, but this was again a municipal police car. So they fired at him 22 times. And the cruiser had huge bullet holes in it. And you can imagine.
It's all right.
You can imagine how my son's body looked. And when they opened the door, he fell on the ground. No one saw any weapon or anything. This is difficult sometimes.
It never gets easy.
And we had a difficult time trying to figure out where our son was because we didn't ID him. And when we said we were coming to Baltimore to the medical examiner's office, they said, well, he's already been ID'd. We called back to Prince George's Hospital. They said he's not here. And we finally go to Prince George's Hospital, and the surgeon said, your son was shot numerous times. And it was only before my son was buried that I saw him. My sister and my nephew took pictures of his body, and those pictures were put on the internet. And what really brought people out to gather around us was seeing my son's body on the internet. And this was in 1999, 6 years after my son was killed, that we did a 22-day protest at the courthouse in Upper Marlboro. We had people like Reverend the Honorable Fauntleroy, and we had Dick Gregory to come out, Martin Luther King III came, and there's a picture of me leaning on Martin Luther King III's shoulder. As we marched around the building, they were chanting, how many bullets, how many bullets? And when it got to 14, I just lost it. I thought I was going to go crazy. I said, I better stop. That's what I'm telling myself because they're going to put me in the crazy house. And I finally stopped, and that's where I landed on Martin Luther King's shoulder, and he was very comforting. We did this again for 22 consecutive Wednesdays. And at one point, I must mention that Joe Madison, the radio host, he's with Sirius XM now, he was the one who also was planning the strategy. And we met at Reverend Fauntleroy's church every Sunday to plan our strategy for that Wednesday. And we determined that at least 2 or 3 of us would get locked up every Wednesday. And when Joe Madison said, I'm going to stand in front of the courthouse door, and you all can come, whoever wants to join me. And I said, I can't let him go without my going over there. And the sheriff's deputies, when they took us inside and put that little plastic thing to handcuff us, they were trying to block my view from the media that was standing out there. They didn't want them to see me getting locked up. And I said, well, you know, you've done the worst you can do for me.
Right.
And I sort of moved over to the side, and then the sheriff deputies would move, trying to block my view. But anyway, we went up to Jack Johnson's office. He was the state's attorney at the time. We wanted him to reopen the case, and of course he didn't. We had petitions, and he said, why should we bother to open the case unless you bring me new evidence, which we didn't have. And so right at this point, there is a petition for justice for Archie Elliott III, and we have more than 4,000 signatures on it, and we're hoping to get 5,000 by the time the state's attorney meet with us to say what the outcome is of this case. But of all the years, we've gone to at least 3 state's attorneys, and they said there are no records for my son. No records whatsoever. And I have some depositions, a lot of depositions from Judge Elliott, myself, and the attorneys, the police officers who killed my son and those who came on the scene. And Judge Elliott and I went around to the neighborhood trying to get witnesses, because when my son was killed, that was the 18th of June, and it wasn't too long after that that the 4th of July came, and people thought those were firecrackers that they heard.
Wow. And
my son didn't come home that night before he went to work the next day, because he was planning my birthday, which was the next day. And can you imagine what it feels like every 19th of June? And it was just 3 days before Father's Day too, so you know there are a lot of dates in there, but thank God I'm still standing.
Yes.
Greetings. As you can see, this is hard. This is a club that none of us mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, we didn't ask for. We didn't sign up for. We were thrust into this space after the tragic loss of our loved one. My son, Kevin L. Cooper, at the tender age of 14, was shot and killed in my home in front of me by a Baltimore City police officer. It's been 14 years, and he only had 14 years of life. On August the 12th of 2006, while holding a plastic dustpan, according to the Baltimore City Police Department, the plastic dustpan was a weapon. That's what they call a weapon that's used against a trained man who is armed, who has different types of weapons, and also went to a police academy to shoot a 14-year-old in distress in his home with no shirt on, a pair of basketball shorts, when the other officer left the home to say that the call was abated, meaning that the call is over. So if the call is over, that means that you should leave and it's over and done. Any paperwork that needs to be filed could be filed at a later time and date, but the one officer chose to stay and had a conversation with a 14-year-old, escalating a situation that was already calm. The hard part for me is the mother's job is to protect their children. I was unable to protect my son against this officer and a system. But for the past 14 years, myself and my family, that we have been standing and making noise in the system, not only for our family, for justice for Kevin, but for other families across this nation as a whole. Just as George Floyd was being murdered, and he called out for his mother.
Yes.
That was a call for all mothers to stand up. Because some mothers can't get out the bed.
Yes.
Some mothers are truly in distress. Some mothers can't move or can't speak about what has happened. But that was a call for all of us mothers to come together to stand as one, to fight this injustice that's taking place in our cities, not only here, but across this nation as a whole. They're going to have to stop killing our children and covering it up, trying to sweep it under the rug. As they did with Kevin withholding the plastic dustpan, I said, you will not sweep him under a rug. That rug that you're trying to sweep him under has become lumpy, it has become hard, and the dirt that's under there is piled high. It is time for us to bring our children's name to a forefront and fight a racist system that has been against us for a long time. We can do it as one if we stand together as one. Come together in love and in unity. Stand in solidarity and continue to fight. It was one shot. He shot Kevin through his arm, his shoulder, and it went in and busted his heart. One shot. You heard Dorothy said it took multiple shots. But for Kevin, it was one shot. They bust his heart, but they did not kill his spirit.
No.
And they will not kill his spirit. As long as God put breath in my body, I will continue to lift up the name of Kevin L. Cooper, who was shot on August the 12th by a rookie officer 1 year on a force. He was not taken off the force. He was shot 9:30 a.m. in the morning. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, they had already said it was a justifiable homicide.
Wow.
How can you justify a homicide that just occurred at 9:30 a.m. in the morning?
That's what they do.
I had no time to go to make a statement. Baltimore City police officers were allowed 10 days to write a narrative. A narrative that they falsified to fit their scenario, to get away with murder. They offered our family $10,000, in which we refused. We went to court on a civil case. They paid over $250,000 to fight us in court to sustain and uphold a lie. But in the end, we will get justice. We will get justice. Because long as I have breath in my body, and there's a God that's higher, a God that is greater, a God that is more powerful than any racist system that may walk this earth, that there will be justice for all of our families. So I say to the families, continue to stand. Continue to lift up your loved ones and tell your story. Don't let nobody try to tell your story. Because when they tell your story, by the time we get from here to there, it's going to be all turned around. I thank you all for listening to us, standing with us, continue to stand with the families as we stand together as one.
Thank you all so much for sharing your story. We see you, we hear you, we love you. And on those moments that you can't walk, know that we got you. There's nothing you can ask for this village. I am so sorry that this is your experience. But I am with Ayana when I say I no longer question God. I just know that our pieces in this puzzle are different, but we are going to solve this thing. I love y'all. Thank you so much. At this time, we will now call the families of Miriam Carey, Amar Brooks, and Raphael Briscoe to share their stories. And Trey Joyner. It's okay. Again, we welcome the families of Miriam Carey, Amir Brooks, Raphael Briscoe, and we have someone else going. I'm sorry. Trey Joyner. Thank you. I wanted to make sure everybody knew you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm just going to pass the mic. Please introduce yourself, the level that you're representing, and share your story as you see fit.
Thank you. My name is Valerie Carey. I'm the sister of Miriam Carey, who was killed by U.S. Secret Service Police and Capitol Police here in Washington, D.C., October 3rd, 2013. My sister was a law-abiding citizen. She was a taxpayer. She was a mother. She was a daughter. She was a friend. My sister was not in the commission of a crime when she was shot at over 26 times, sustaining 5 shots to her back as she drove with her 13-month-old baby, my niece, in the back seat of her Infiniti. What my sister may have been guilty of, if you want to say guilt, is a U-turn. What I find in this country, which is so discerning, it's just very sad how we are treated as brown and black people. How when one of us are killed, the first thing is to try to criminalize the victim.
Always.
And when that doesn't work, because that person is not a criminal, then you try to discredit them and you try to play up a mental illness. Let me be clear, my sister was not mentally ill. And let me also be clear, if in fact she were, that is not reason to kill someone. What I find is that in the black and brown community, that mental illness is a stigma. And that's something that we as a people have to get past. And because there's a stigma in our community, some of us feel like, oh well, they deserve what they got. So we can say that they were crazy and they deserve to be shot. However, someone who's not black can go into a theater, can go into a church with an assault rifle and kill multitudes of people. And they can be taken into custody and their mental illness is sympathized. Our mental illness is criminalized. I'm a retired New York City police sergeant from the NYPD. I know about procedures and laws and policies, and those officers that killed my sister totally went against their policies, and what they did was criminal. There is an active cover-up of what happened to my sister. Documents that was FOIA'd through the Freedom of Information Act, highly redacted. Police radio transmissions, which I'm very familiar with the jargon and the lingo and the language, was not released. Within maybe 6 to 9 months, they closed an investigation, which was really not an investigation. So we are actively, and I say we, me, my sister. My mom, unfortunately, is no longer with us. She internalized her pain, and my mom passed away 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer. But we will continue to pursue justice for my sister, and justice is not about money, because we can clearly have filed our claims for the lawsuit, but I'm more interested in the individuals who were responsible for taking my sister's life. Those officers on that day were furloughed. They were not being paid. The officer who was the catalyst and the reason why my sister is dead was off duty and not in uniform. He placed himself in harm's way by dragging what would you call a maybe a parade barrier, it looks like a bike ride. He dragged it into the path of my sister's moving vehicle. So while the media may have tried to play up an individual who rammed the White House gate, that is not, in fact, the truth. My sister was a half a mile away from the White House. That was not a White House gate, and it was placed in her path. And this individual, who was an off-duty cop, who inflicted, well, actually interjected in an on-duty traffic situation because my sister drove into an area which was claimed to be restricted. However, if it were truly restricted, there would have been a gate, a partition, something that would have prevented traffic flow from going into that area. So as my sister went into a restricted area, I surmised she realized she was going in the wrong direction and made a U-turn. And the two on-duty officers who were in uniform, they didn't put themselves into the path of my sister's moving vehicle. It was the white off-duty officer who was in plain clothes carrying a water cooler in his hand. You're not identifiable as a police officer at this point. And in the process of this, he fell. And that's what started the chase of my sister for 1.5 miles to the Capitol Circle. And they shot at my sister over 26 times, hitting her in the back of her head, in the back of her back, in the back of her arm, while her 13-month-old baby was in the back seat with the bullets just merely missing my niece. There is a petition on change.org, but also on www.justiceformiriamcarey.com. This October makes 7 years. It's time. It's time for justice. It's time for transparency. It's time for those who are responsible to be held accountable and to be named, because those officers have not been named. I'm here with other families, and I'd rather not be here. And I'm sure the other families feel the same way.
Yeah.
But I thank everyone for taking the time out to listen and support those who are going through something that some will never ever understand. And some of us speak up for our loved ones, not for attention, but for justice. Thank you.
My name is Brenda Joyner, and I'm Trey Joyner's mom. He got killed in the year of June 8, 09. We had not received any justice. As a mom, loving her son, Trey Joyner, it took away an angel from me and my family. Trey was a very loving, kind person. He loved everyone. He had the old, the young. That's the kind of person he was. As he's been gone now for 11 years, as his mom that truly loves him with all her heart, the family and I, we grieve a lot. I try to be strong. I just want to know, when is the time that's going to come for us to get the right justice? It's not just my family suffering. It's a lot of families that went through the same thing. When your son or daughter get killed, it goes through the same story. They said that Trey had a gun in the night that he got killed on June 8, 09. Trey didn't have anything but Trey. At the time that the police got him, so he can get out of the car good, what was explained to me, he got out of the car, didn't run, they said he ran. I don't believe nothing that they have told this family. We're still going through a lot. The love that we have for him, we want justice. And in the process of him getting killed by the U.S. Park Police, they shot Trey 9 times in the back He tell y'all they only shot Trey for less, but it's more. He was shot in the back, shot 9 times, bullets all over his back and body. Whole body loaded down with bullets. What I don't understand with the court system here and the justice system here, they're not doing their job. We had an attorney for Trey. He played his family like a drama. But God is great. He has shown me how they really treat black people. And when these young men get killed, it's the same story. I want to see change. I'm so tired, keep hearing them saying, that young man had a knife, or that young man had a gun. They're lying on our children. Our children is sacrificing our lives just to be our children out here. And there's other kids out here now. I got grandkids on both sides, boys and girls. I worry about them constantly. But one thing I will say, in dealing with this life, we're not getting the justice. But I know we are going to get the justice because God has promised us the light of this coming. And as of now, things are beginning to look better. I thank each and every last one of y'all for inviting me here tonight and trying to help each one of us mother and father with our children. I want justice. I want change. And I want us to get some new lawyers that's willing to come into court and help these families and stop lying out their mothers and fathers that they learn from. Because in Trey's situation, the lawyer that he had, he was a white man. He knew the law, and I knew he knew the law. But God let me go through the life to see how they really treat us. He pretended he had Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, or whatever you want to name it. He just wanted to get to know what we knew. And all the thing we knew was we loved our son. And he's gone, and the way he was killed, there was no justice. But we're going to get some justice. God promised all of us justice. We're going to get it. And we need people like Al Sharpton, Louis Farragon, and whoever else that want to step to the plate, help these families get some real lawyers. We need a real deal Holyfield. Our life is in danger every day. And I'm so tired of hearing the same story every day, every week, every month. And we still not getting no justice. But God promised us the glory. And to God be the glory. We're going to get justice. I love each and every last one of y'all. And only God knows our heart. We got to keep trying. I want justice. For my son and everybody that's son and daughter in this room. There's people all over the world that's suffering. I want us to get some answers. And it starts right now. And having lawyers that's willing to step in the room and help us. I would say, I'm not ashamed to say, I don't have money to fight my son's case, but I do want my son's case to be reopened because when it came time for us to go to court, they had carried Trey's case all the way to Philadelphia. He had white parents that I don't know, that I never met. But God said, I'm his mother, and I'm going to continue to be his mother. I want the help that we all deserve as mothers and fathers for our children. We don't need no lying people standing in front of us or no judges taking up for these lawyers. These U.S. Park Police, they was big enough to do what they did to shoot this boy in the back. They're big enough to take whatever beating that you need to get whooped with. God say, we're coming to get y'all. It's never too late to step in the room and fight with God. He's going to make a way. He's already making a way. I got the faith. My son Trey, I saw a rainbow the day that I buried him. God let me know. To God be the glory. Everything going to be all right. I live one day at a time. And I care about life within itself. We need this love for one another. Stop fighting one another and help each other. I thank God for all these beautiful people in this room. It doesn't matter what color we is. We all need help. And I thank God for each and every last one of y'all. Have a blessed week and a blessed summer. Take care. Take care.
Hello everyone, my name is Pamela Brooks. On August the 6th, 2014, my 17-year-old son Amir lost his life. And his only crime was being a teenager enjoying the summer break riding a dirt bike. In my apartment complex at the time, we had Prince George's County Police doing security in our complex. My son and his cousin were on a dirt bike. They rode the dirt bike up my complex. They were going to get gas from the bike. And this police officer began to chase my son out of the complex. Now he's off duty. He's working security, so he's not even on PG County payroll at this time. So he chased my son a mile on Pennsylvania Avenue on the median on the wrong side of the street. Another mile in the DC, my son lost control and hit a tree. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. Before this chase even began, this man called the bike in, described the bike. The dispatch told this police officer that the bike that he described wasn't this. He alleged this bike my son was on was involved in a robbery 8 weeks prior to this chase. He called his dirt bike in, gave him a description of the bike. Dispatch told this man, that's not the bike we're looking for, fall back. He didn't fall back. He kept on chasing my son, all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue, another mile in the DC, down Alabama Avenue. My son lost control and he hit a tree. Not to mention his cousin was on the back of the bike with him. Both of them were thrown. My son had so many injuries. It was unbelievable. His femur bone was out his leg. Every right bone on the right side of his head was crushed. His neck was broke. His back was broke. You might as well say everything in his whole body was broke. So this police officer got to the scene of this crash. It's on tape. It shows this police officer getting out of his car, looking at my son on the ground. He got back in the car and pulled off. He rendered no aid to my son. Didn't help my son. He went back to my apartment complex, and it was time for him to get off work of his security job. He wrote on the report, I have it, and it says, chase dirt bike fled in DC, period. He never mentioned that he crossed DC line. He never mentioned that he was on the scene. He never mentioned that he saw my son, his cousin, gravely injured on the ground. He didn't even bring any aid. My son lived. The accident actually happened on August 4th. He lived 2 days on life support. But God made that. They knew my son couldn't live with those type of injuries that he had. But my thing is, I think the biggest thing that's hurting me about this whole thing is that this man left my son in the street like a animal. You know, he didn't help him at all. Who's to say if he would have helped him, my son, we don't know that, would he even have a chance to live? Because his heart stopped at the scene. And he had to be married back to Washington Hospital, so he gave 50 pints of blood once he arrived. The next day he got another 50 pints of blood. And I think I have so much anger in me because of that. And I mean, I just want to ask you, man, why did you help him? If you knew you were wrong, okay, you're wrong, take that. Even if you were on or off duty as a police officer, you're supposed to protect and serve, help. Whether you're on or off duty, you knew you were wrong. That's why you left the scene. But nothing was done to this police officer. Nothing. He was on desk duty for about a month, administrative, right after. But he's back working. He's still a Prince George's County police officer. He's still working part-time, doing part-time jobs, because I seen him, and I approached him. That's another story. He know who I am now. But I want to get to you all. I want you all, like, right now, we see it on the news every day, just to let y'all know, this can happen to anybody. This is knocking on everybody's door. And people always say, I see it all the time, people talk about how people post about their children on social media, right? But guess what? Who else will talk about it?
Right.
Because once the story is done, it's done. Nobody's going to talk about your child. I post about my son every day. I don't care if I put a picture of me, you're going to see no Chase and Leah Brooks. Behind anything I post, you have to, because we're not high-profile cases. You have to make your case high-profile, and that's what I do. I talk about my son all day long, and the mothers I met along this journey, I hate that I had to meet them like this, but I'm glad that I met them, because some of them became closer than family to me, and people don't understand this. My son's death has broken me apart. I'm not even the same person anymore. I try to be, but I'm not. The family's not the same. And just like she said, my mother died 2 years after my son's death, and I know my mother died from grief. My son's death killed my mother, so there's 2 deaths back to back in my family. And people, I try to go on for normal life, but I say a lot to myself. I try to get away because I don't want to be bothered with people, because it's just what it does to the family. That's life after death. It tears the family to pieces. No matter how hard you try to live a normal life, you have to shield them. that people don't know is behind it. People say, oh, you smiling, you only knew.
Right.
I'm messed up in the inside.
Right.
But I just don't talk about it, you know, because I know people get tired of people talking about their children. But I'm glad I have a gang of moms around me that don't judge me when I want to talk about my son. You know, because you have a lot of people, you see the expressions, you see how they look at you. They don't want to hear it. But until they knock on their door, you wait, you see how they act then. Because it's nothing we ask to be a part of.
Right.
And like every day, it's like, I just came back from vacation. I shut off social media. I didn't want to see anything going on in the United States. As soon as I got back to the States, my phone beeping with this stuff going on with the guy shot in the back. You know, it's like over here, it's just a mess. And people better wake up because like I said, it can happen to anybody. Anybody. Amen. And people don't get that. Like, I never thought I'd be up here doing this. Like, I was with his car earlier. My son died 3 weeks after Eric Garner, 3 days before Michael Brown. Then Tamir Rice was a couple months later. It was 4 back-to-back killings by police officers. And none of them were charged. Now, what's wrong with that picture?
Everything.
What's wrong with that picture? In any of these instances with any of our children, if they had killed those police officers, you already know what would happen. They would have beat them up, tortured them, killed them, but they would definitely be in jail. But these people are walking around freely, living life like it's all good, and it's not. You destroy families. But that's like any other thing. We don't want any money. And that's the first thing people ask me, did you sue? Did you sue? What the hell I got to do anything? It's not going to bring my son back. I want this man to be in jail. And I think that's what we all want. He caused my son's death, and he was wrong. We want these people to go to jail just like they would have did our children. Lock them up like they would have did our children. And that's it.
Yes, sing it.
Good evening. I'm Rosetta. Raphael is from my home.
Take your time.
Thank you. It's hard to talk about. It's really, really hard to keep. Every time you talk about it, you're reliving the death of your child. And nothing has happened. Raphael was on Elvis Road, Southeast, on a hot, I guess it was about to be a summer day, and unmarked jump out, as they say they don't have jump outs, but they still have jump outs, enter the complex. So they saw Raphael, and Raphael, he's hyper. He always been hyper. He walks on his toes, so he bounces. So they asked him, they said, you got a gun on you? Raphael's a little guy. He wore, most of them wear their pants, fit to them in their shirts. So he lifted his hands up to know that he didn't have a gun. So Raphael continued to walk, and that was his right. He can walk away. He can walk away from that. So he walked away. And remind you, they was in an unmarked car, a truck. They wasn't in police uniform. They was in regular clothes. So it was 4 officers. The 2 in the back jumped out the vehicle, and Raphael's car was walking real fast, and he started running. So the 2 officers on foot chased Raphael. And the driver and the police officer in the back of the driver was in high-speed chase of Raphael, and Raphael running. But prior, Raphael was on his phone 3 minutes before he was shot. So Raphael was running down Ellis Road. It's a little white house, and like if you go down, it's a cut. I guess they know it's cut, but they can get away or whatever. And the reason I think Raphael ran is because they always come around harassing the black men in the community for no reason, just harassing.
So as Raphael was running, you can see the truck pursuing Raphael. So Raphael was just, because he knows how to run, he ran track. So he's getting it. And so like they told me, they said he was smoking the truck. So I guess he was upset that Raphael was running so fast. So Raphael was running with his cell phone in his hand. And by the time he turned the corner of the house, you can see in the video, Raphael, mind you, that the shooting of Raphael was put on their CCTV. Now, the video, the TV, the camera, it rotates. It constantly rotates. It don't stay on, it just rotates. But that was just only God, because it stayed on Raphael the whole time, from the beginning to the end. It captured everything. It captured, so let me go back. So Raphael fell, Raphael's right hand. Raphael falls, his hands goes up, and you see Raphael's falling. And when he falls, they move Raphael. They move Raphael to the left-hand side. They took and handcuffed Raphael. They put their knee on Raphael back. So, they said that the BB gun that Raphael was supposed to have was a broken BB gun. Now, Raphael was just on his cell phone before he was shot. There's no way that Raphael, the way he was running, can transfer a cell phone to his pocket and pull out a gun. So they said the BB gun was broken. If the BB gun was broken, it would have crumbled all up and down Elvis Road. The camera, so when they go out, they label the objects, placards, placard 1, 2, 3. So placard 3 is considered as the BB gun. So placard 3 is at the foot of Raphael on the left-hand side. Now remind you, Raphael is right hand, he fell this way. So that means that if it was a gun or whatever he had, would have slid that way, not to the left. So you can see in the video, an officer going like this in the video. He's trying to kick the BB gun close to Raphael. So during the so they called me. They never charged the police officer for Raphael's death. MPD decided not to charge him. So I asked questions. I said, well, why didn't you charge him? They didn't have a reason. They couldn't give me a reason why he wasn't charged. All they said was, oh, it took a second or an instant. Okay, so still, why didn't you charge him? So as I left, they told me, they said, they knew it was some bull crap. They told me, they said, you stay on MPD, because they knew it was some bull crap. So we went to court. Like they said, it's not about the money. I never want the money. I want justice for my son. So we went to court. So they say, you go to court because, you know, you get some money or you get them, that's proving they're guilty. Okay, let's do this. Okay, whatever you say. So when we get to court, we had a person to like look at the video and do the video. And in court we found out that coming out the truck, we saw something coming out the truck. They threw the BB gun out the truck, and where it landed, it was placard number 3, the BB gun. So in trial, because this is the gun recovery unit, in trial they said, well, you know, when we do our little training, we had BB guns to do our training. Oh, so you had a BB gun in your car. Raphael's fingerprints was never on the gun, and it was a hot ass day. Why did the police have on gloves? Okay. This is what they do. The whole time we was in trial, my lawyer, because my lawyer, he's a criminal lawyer. So he was just going out. He sweat. He can't look at me. I'm staring down. And he's like, he's shaking. He said, well, I thought he had a gun. I thought that's what I seen. I thought. So by this time, we had to wait till the next day and come back. So by this time, you know, they telling him what to say the next day. The next day he come back, all he says, I fear for my life.
Plastic.
How the, excuse my language, how the fuck you fear for your life if you're in a big ass truck?
That's right, sweetheart.
My son feared for his life.
Exactly. Exactly with that.
It pisses me off, I'm sorry. It pisses me off. Come to find out, he's a detective now. So you get, so you become a detective because you killed the black boy? So they asked him in court, they said, well, why was you pursuing Raphael? Was he committed a crime? Was he somebody you all was looking at? Have you ever seen Raphael? They said, no, you've never seen him before. So why did you pursue him? Because you was mad? Because when you went into that area, there was nobody around, so you said, okay, and then he started running? He had the right to run. He don't have to stay and talk to you all. That's his given rights. He wasn't under arrest. And then you never told Raphael that you was a police officer. My son, if you look at the video, it looks like my son. It was a drive-by on my son by the police officer.
Wow.
It does.
The jury was majority white. Majority white. And it was 3 black jurors. So what did you see that day in trial that even if you didn't see just being black, you should have just made it a mistrial? Point blank, a mistrial. We have a change petition going on to try to get Raphael case reopened because it was never, it never went anywhere. It just stayed within MPD. I just like to say thank you all for always, because I was fighting in the court. Just fighting. And it was hard, it was rough, it was just, but I thank you all for continuing to mention Raphael's name, to keep Raphael's name alive in his story, because no one knew his story. And the reason why no one knew his story, because it was on a gag reel. They put it on a gag reel. The only reason why Raphael videotape was released because we lost the civil trial. So if I would have took the money from them, Raphael case would have never came to service. No one else could use Raphael's case. So I thank God for doing what he's doing. I don't know why he do the things he do, but only he knows what he do. I just have to continue to trust him because I know justice will be prevailed for Raphael and for all of us. Thank you.
Can we please give more love to the families of Miracle, You know, as we sit here, ladies, all I heard was, oh, hell no. I want y'all to take that passion, share that change.org petition like we shared our thoughts on that WAP video. What you're hearing right now, and I explain this on the air every day for every viral name you know, there's a good 10 to 20 that never saw light of day. I I challenge everyone in this room, no matter what part of the village that you rep, go back to your city, Google, and then join those families in a fight to bring the justice that should have been. The second thing I'll tell you is the overlying thing is we want justice, and we see these officers never being held accountable. I want to introduce you to the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. The Law Enforcement Bill of Rights is the reason why we scared TVs. Right now we have tears in our eyes for the justice that has been robbed of you, taken. Because the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights says a cop gets 10 days to write their narrative. That they can only be investigated by another officer in the precinct in which they work. They can see the body cam. They get to see all the evidence. They get the names, information, and addresses of everybody who is saying that they want them charged. That sounds fair to y'all? No. That sounds like something that should be right? That on the liberties that we just get as individuals, they get about 4 more tiers. Y'all didn't come for homework, but you got some today. I want you to go home and I want you to research the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights and how it's been adopted by police unions, your council members, your states, your city representatives, and they stare you in your face and tell you they have no idea why justice keeps slipping through your fingers. They have every goddamn idea. So start pushing them to change that, because when we change that, you can't hide behind a coworker guiding you and telling you everything. We change that, they get arrested on the scene when they take a life, like we would. I couldn't go through it. You heard these stories tonight? You think anybody in this room could have did any of the things you heard? We'd be sending you guys to put money on your books right now as we speak. They are not above the law. Hell, they ain't even the law. God is the law. So the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, and take these change out petitions, and I want you to post them. Like we talk about Fenty, ask Rihanna when she's gonna drop her album, and everything in between. Share this. We are that power. They may not be viral now, or so you think, because in my mind you are. They will be viral tomorrow, but in order for that to happen, that is on us. So again, I thank you. I know sharing these stories are not easy. I'm hearing pieces as a person that covered those stories here that I could not get. We would ask for information and we get the runaround. You go through 80 emails. Stay in touch with me. You may not think you have a voice here in media to hell you say. I got a text group called Black TV Radio Producers. And we don't do anything but share stories that we know need more light. So keep me in the Rolodex. Keep me. Thank y'all so much again. We love you, we wrap you in love, and we got you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. I'm coming to hug you too. Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. Y'all ain't know about that, did y'all? Come on up. Like, listen, we family here. We're getting ready for anything? All right? While we wait for Andre, I'm always here to learn something.
Okay, I want to say very briefly that I know about the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. Marion Hopkins and I have testified in Annapolis quite a few times against the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And we had asked for a special prosecutor to investigate homicides by law enforcement when they kill. And they said we don't need that bill. But every time it comes up, we will be in Annapolis. So please, please continue to fight and vote.
A special announcement before we go with our men.
Families, before you leave, there's a butterfly with your family's member name on it. We're going to be doing a butterfly release, I guess right after this. So please don't leave before you get your butterfly. One thing that I want to say is I released butterflies for my sister on her birthday and her death day. The significance for me is that when my sisters and I traveled to Niagara Falls, butterflies were just gravitating towards my sister, and I got really, really nice pictures of butterflies laying on my sister. So that's a moment that I shared with my sister that I remember. So I'm here in DC, and I don't want to think about how my sister, how horrifically that she died. Her death is not the sum of her life. And I want all of us to know that our loved ones are more than the way that they died. So tonight I want to release butterflies, not just for Miriam, but for Corinne, and for India, and for Terrence, and for Amir, and for so many of us. I want to release butterflies for them and to think of those special memories that you have with your loved one and not think of the horrific way that they were taken away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I give you Andre. Wait a minute, y'all. I said now I give you Andre. That's when you give me
I want y'all to just Google Black Joy Experience. She the one holding it down. Y'all know when we be in them streets and we be saying them chants. She make music out of those chants.
Yes.
Yo.
She is banging.
Yo. On all music platforms, Black Joy Experience, and she made Black Joy Experience too. Yo.
Yo.
Follow her.
Yo.
Follow her.
Yeah.
All right, Black Joy Experience.
She's banging.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
To God be the glory for mothers, for strong mothers and strong sisters. If y'all don't mind just closing your eyes real quick, those who are willing and able. So there's this misconception, especially in the Baptist church, Christian church, that we have to forgive on the spot. We have to move past our anger and our frustrations immediately. But I want y'all to know that it's okay to rest in your frustration. It's okay to rest in your hurt and in your pain. It's okay for you to be upset, to be sad, to shed tears. But I also want you to know that we are here to support you in the best way that we can to move through that. To move through it so that you can get to your healing. To move through it so that you can get to your freedom and rest in your peace. To move through it so that you can finally experience justice for your family members. And so, while we have been told for years that we cannot experience joy, I'm here today to help us to reclaim that joy, to claim that joy. Because Black joy is something that helps to sustain us through our trauma. Our joy is something that we are entitled to. And so I want you real quick, as you have your eyes closed, I want you to think about that thing, those things that bring you joy. Whether that's a warm bubble bath, whether that's a hot meal, a good meal. For me, it's Wendy's. It's Wendy's 4 for 4. I'm just saying. Whether that's a glass of water in the morning, whether that's prayer and meditation, whether it's getting a smile from somebody from across the room, whether it's getting embraced, receiving a hug, we are reclaiming and or claiming our joy today. And we're going to do our best again to push you through to get to your healing. Can we commit to that today? So I'm going to play a song. For those of you who would like to stand up, feel free to stand up. For those of you who want to vibe, want to do a little two-step, feel free. Now I want you to know I don't sing. You can hit me up and say, can you come and sing? I said, yeah, I don't sing. I make don't want to mess up the vibe. But I'm going to play a song that I produced in partnership with my friend Jonathan Likes, amazing vocalist. And this song is called Healing. And it's a bit upbeat, so feel free to vibe with me, okay? I'm going to try to sing it so you can know the hook, okay? You ready? So I want you to repeat after me. Say this. Healing, 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 healing. Mind, body, and soul, yes. Mind, body, and soul, yes. You ready? Go. Healing, 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 healing. Snap with me. Mind, body, and soul, yes. Mind, body, and soul, yes. One more time. You got it. You got it. Ready? Healing, 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 healing. Mind, body, and soul, yes. Thanks, Mama. Mind, body, and soul, yes. One more time. You got it?